Jody, Bessemer City. Zip, Jody from Bessemer City. Also have Indy. She's on as well from Bessemer City. Our new person, most of you, a lot of you've met. Some of you may not have. She started the 1st of April. So.
Okay, great. Anybody else? Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started. And I did invite Kevin. Kevin has been with I don't know how long, with Spartanburg Parks and Recreation. They're kind of a little bit ahead of the curve on us with the COVID-19 situation. So they started a lot of their programs up, starting in May 31st. I think they had practices.
All right, so
they get ready to start games and things like that. Okay, here's Andy.
All right, so all in favor of C3 on this one?
Hey, Andy. What we're going to do is, one quick note, this is being recorded and will be put on the website later. Also, for everybody right now, go ahead and mute yourself so when we get that feedback. And we'll have time for questions. You can just chime in when you have a question or two for Kevin or any of the other members. So we'll go ahead and let Kevin get started with his presentation. I think he's going to take about 30, 40 minutes, and then we'll have questions and comments after that. So introduce Kevin from the Spartanburg County Parks and Recreation Department.
Awesome, Zip. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity and the invite to come chat with your group here. We may be ahead of the curve, but probably like many of you, this is a daily challenge. And as information and data become available, this is and has been an ever-evolving process. And so I pulled together a quick PowerPoint. I would like for this to be as informal as possible. So if you have questions as I do this, just let me know. I'm trying to figure out, though, how to share this Zoom. Let's see. Let's see if this is sharing my screen. Zip, is it sharing my screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay,
yeah, I can see
awesome. All right, is that up?
It's just a black screen.
Let's see. How about now?
Starting to share. Yeah, there it is.
Awesome. Okay. Well, as Zip mentioned, I'm in Spartanburg County, which is not far from you guys, just right down from your area. And we have been working through the COVID-19. And as Zip mentioned, we have started to reopen. And so the reopening process has been challenging as we have tried to balance federal, state, and local governance, just like you guys are back in your home. And whether we want to acknowledge it or not, COVID-19 for us has been very political, probably like you. Our council is relatively conservative in nature, and so politics have definitely played a role in decisions that have been made. And so I think it's important to note that as well. Some of my counterparts in other cities or counties around have taken a different approach, as they have been more, have taken a slower approach. The other thing that has been important, like you are active with your state association, I happen to be the president for the South Carolina Recreation and Park Association this year, of all years. And so this year has been challenging on that side as well, but we have pulled together weekly Zoom meetings of all state directors within South Carolina. And we have also created some task force to help develop some guidelines as it relates to athletics and summer camps, playgrounds, and then rental facilities and programs. And so those have also been very important pieces that have helped us prepare as much as we can to reopen. And so I'm going to walk through athletics and summer camp and playgrounds, and then how we're managing rentals and programs. And then maybe it will be easier at the end if you have questions. I'll be happy to talk through those. By no means is what we're doing perfect. Is it the best way to do it? But it's, I think, a way for us to balance the need of our community for programs and services, also with the challenge and the risk that COVID-19 has presented, as it is real and active in our community. And so that has been my key talking point when I talk to council members, is that any decision that we make as it relates to reopening or starting programs for the community, we need to acknowledge that COVID-19 exists and that there's a risk associated with that. And at the same time, our community is also in great need of programs, and they're in great need of summer camp and childcare. And so how do we balance those two things when we're looking at reopening? The other conversation is as it relates to staff. Some of our staff are ready to resume. Some of our staff have real concerns about interacting and engaging with the public again. And so how can we set them up for success, either through training or through providing personal protective equipment or temperature checks, so on and so forth, so that we can try to reopen in a safe manner as possible. When we look at athletics specifically, there was a tremendous amount of pressure for us to reopen athletic facilities. Most of the political pressure and pushback that we received here in Spartanburg was related to youth sports. We have a couple of tourism-related facilities. We have a park that has 13 baseball, softball fields that runs sports tourism type events from February through November, and there was a lot of pressure to resume those events. And as Zip mentioned earlier, the governor in South Carolina lifted executive orders to allow practices to resume on May 31st and games to resume June 15th. And so we are set up and ready to comply. We had practices starting Sunday, May 31. I would note that, as I mentioned earlier, our council is very conservative and felt that the governor's executive orders were in violation of the state constitution, and they wanted us to open prior to those executive orders being lifted. Our county administrator and myself worked closely together to do our best to ensure that we were in line with those executive orders, which was extremely challenging. But anyway, that's where we're at now. And so when we look at reopening facilities to the public, I've got a list of bullets here that are things that we've done. We've done more than this, but here are some of the key items that we have hit on. Signage. When you look at the return to play guidelines for most sanctioning bodies and organizations, the whole signage for social distancing is continually listed as one of the top items. So we have signage out everywhere in our parks and our athletic facilities, reminding people about social distancing. When I close this presentation, I've got a few slides that show some of the examples, the signage that we're using. And so I'll close by showing you some visuals there. But signage is a must. 6-foot spacing markers where people are sitting or where lines can queue. So on our bleachers, we have dots that mark 6 feet. And so throughout our parks, if you go to one of our bleachers, you will see we have dots with noting where 6 feet spacing markers are. Any lines that would form in front of our concession areas, we have added spacing markers on the concrete there, very similar to what you would see if you were going to Home Depot or Publix or whatever grocery store or Target or shopping area in your community. We have also expanded the dugout areas. One of the challenges is it's easy to get spectators to spread out from a spacing standpoint if they choose to do so. But when we look at players and coaches, dugouts are not large enough to allow players to have social distancing within the dugouts. And so we've expanded dugout areas. Some of our parks have bullpens that are connected to the dugouts, and so those gates are remained open. And so the bullpen area is not functioning like a bullpen area, but players are bringing bag chairs, and we are spreading dugout areas out larger than just the constructed dugout. In some of our parks where we don't have nice bullpen areas that are connected to the dugouts, we have painted a rectangle box that is connected to the dugout area, either on one end or the other, or directly behind, that is only allowed for use by players, coaches, and those personnel that are allowed to be in the dugout. Again, it's hard to manage that per se, but we are communicating that to the coaches and players to give them dedicated area that they have that is larger than just the existing dugout. We have turned off all water fountains. Again, you have probably seen children drink out of a water fountain. They do not do a great job of keeping their mouth off the fountain, and so we have turned off all water fountains and have encouraged everyone to bring their own water bottle. We are cleaning and disinfecting high-touch areas to include restrooms, doorknobs, the benches in the dugouts on a regular basis. We've worked really hard holistically in our department to find a couple of products that are approved through the EPA to kill the coronavirus, but at the same time are very easy to use. And so we have two products that we are using throughout all of our indoor and outdoor facilities, and those are the only two products that staff are allowed to use, and all of our staff have been trained. If you get into the cleaning, there is a cleaning and a sanitizing process. So you have to clean the restroom like you would normally clean it, but then if you want to kill the coronavirus, you need to spray another product on there that could kill that. And so we are doing that. One of the other items that we're working on, and typically this is with the youth associations or with the tournament directors, is that we are requesting that they spread out their practice and game schedules. And so if you work in the athletics arena, you know that when two teams are playing on a field, the next two teams are right there with all their spectators. They're warming up and getting ready. And so we need time so that those fields can clear and those spectators and players can get out of the complex before the next teams come in. That helps with social distancing. It also helps with allowing our staff time to clean and sanitize between games. We are encouraging leagues to send out messages and implement proactive steps to encourage social distancing with their players and coaches and umpires and spectators. We are encouraging and requiring our employees to wear PPE based on their level of activity and what they're doing and their ability to social distance. We are encouraging, not mandating, but we are encouraging spectators to wear a mask. And then we are requiring our concession vendors to comply with all the restaurant guidelines that are in place through DHEC as they return to open restaurants here in our state. Summer camp was probably the most heated and talked about item that we had. Athletics are occurring outdoors for us right now, and so most of the research is showing that the outdoor environment is much safer than the indoor environment as it relates to COVID-19. But at the same time, the citizens in our county were literally screaming for childcare. And so as we're trying to return to normal, and we're trying to turn citizens to work, many of our citizens need childcare to have the ability to return to work. And so we had the conversation with county council again about the value of offering summer camp to our citizens and balancing that with the risk of COVID-19. And so what we deemed and what we talked about with staff as, parks and recreation, we often talk about we are essential. like other county departments, and our citizens need childcare, and that need is extremely important to them at this time. So we are essential, and so we are opening summer camps, and we actually opened our summer camps yesterday. Summer camps look very different than what they have in the past, and number one is we have closed our community centers to public access other than to summer campers and to our staff. Parents are not allowed in our community centers when they're dropping off their children. The only way that they are allowed in our community centers during camp is if they have an appointment or they have an issue. They can schedule that with a supervisor. We're handling it very similarly to a carpool line for drop off and pickup that you would for an elementary school. We have made these sites smaller so that there are only 5 participants per 1,000 square feet, and which includes our staff. We have made our ratios smaller. So instead of having 20 or 30 children in a group playing together, we have broken those groups down to 10, and those 10 children will be the only 10 that they interact with the entire length of summer camp. We're not doing any field trips, no outside guests. We are utilizing more of our full-time employees and fewer part-time employees. We are having an increased focus on hand washing and facility cleanliness, and this really goes back to using those 2 products that I mentioned for athletic side. We're using those 2 products on our summer camps and our indoor facilities as well. The other item that we're doing is we are doing temperature checks. So every morning before a camper or a staff member can come into the community center, they're having their temperature checked. And if their temperature is 100.4 or higher, they're not permitted in the center or allowed to participate or work at summer camp. Additionally, we created a new operations guide, which was in partnership with the American Camp Association. And so we have a departmental procedures manual that covers summer camp, but we added an additional layer for our staff and training as it relates to COVID-19. And the last piece is, again, acknowledging that COVID-19 exposure is still a risk. And it exists. And so we worked with our legal department to clearly communicate that with all of the families that have registered, and also communicate the risk and have them sign a waiver. Again, a waiver is typically only worth the paper that it's written on, but I think we have tried to be very transparent to communicate to the community that COVID-19 exposure is a risk, and as safe as we want to be and as many protocols as we put in place, there's no way for us to guarantee that the exposure could not take place at one of our centers. Playgrounds are another area where we had debate about, and currently the CDC is not recommending playgrounds be open from a national perspective. In South Carolina, the governor has removed executive orders that prevent playgrounds from open. Our council and leadership wanted us to open playgrounds, and so we are adhering to the state's playground reopening guidelines. And essentially what we're communicating to the public that they have to use the playground at their own risk. And I've provided you an example of a sign that we're putting in place at every playground entrance, in addition to our social distancing signage. But we are not cleaning or sanitizing playgrounds daily. We are cleaning and sanitizing playgrounds weekly when we do a high frequency inspection. So we are sanitizing playgrounds once a week when we want park users to know that. And if they choose to use the playground, they're utilizing them at their own risk. My personal opinion is when we open playgrounds, children don't social distance. There's not enough room to do so on playground equipment. There's no way for us to sanitize them between every user. And so if the community so chooses to participate on using a playground, no different than an athletic field for an athletic activity or summer camp, then they are assuming risk associated with that. And so our community really wants playgrounds open. And so we are doing what we can within the resources that we have to sanitize them. But again, no different than our citizens making choices to wear a mask or not wear a mask, to go to Lowe's or not go to Lowe's. our citizens are making decisions every day that either increase or decrease their risk associated with COVID-19. So we have treated playgrounds like that and have tried to educate them on the process and keep them as sanitized as possible. That kind of leads into rentals and events. I would note that Zip and I did talk about events. As of right now, we have canceled all of our special events that would impact groups of 50 or more being in one confined location, whether it be indoor or outdoor. And so we have opened up rentals and events for groups of 50 or less. We have several facilities that are event centers and have a lot of weddings. And so we have, as of May 31, we have reopened those facilities, and groups can utilize our facilities for weddings as long as they meet the state's guidelines for venues of such. And so right now, that is 50 or less. I'm hearing that that number is going to go up to 250, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see what we hear from the governor on that. Again, signage, we have hand washing and social distance signage is placed everywhere. We have decreased capacity to encourage social distancing. We are setting up rooms differently, and I've shown an example of a room setup that we are utilizing through a Meet Safe organization. We did not create this layout, but we're utilizing the layouts that are have been provided by several national organizations that support meetings and conferences and things like that. So having signage on the floor to route traffic, to space chairs out every 6 feet, to keep traffic moving in one direction, a lot of the infrastructure. And I would note on when you look at infrastructure, it is hard for our staff to be social distancing police. What we've tried to do is align room setups and our infrastructure to encourage that and messaging so it's easy for our park users to make that choice. And if they choose not to do that, then it really becomes impossible for us to manage. But we have really tried to go out of our way to set up facilities and rooms to encourage traffic moving in one direction and individuals sitting more than 6 feet apart. We're propping up open doors and windows to get fresh air when feasible. And then again, the routine cleaning and sanitizing schedules. We are wiping down hard and high touch surfaces at a high frequency, cleaning restrooms. And then again, not just cleaning, but we're also sanitizing with a product that is approved by the EPA to kill the coronavirus. From a programmatic standpoint, I don't have a lot on programs. As I mentioned earlier, when we closed all of our community centers to the public because of summer camp, we essentially, and I don't like to use the word I'm about to use, but cannibalized all of the other programs that we offered to offer summer camp. When we interacted with the community, we heard that summer camp was the most important program that we're offering. And so we essentially have tabled all of the programs that we offer in our community centers at the opportunity to be able to open summer camps. And just to give you a few snapshots, some of these pictures are hard to see, but the photo on the left, the concession photo, you can see where we have marked red X's on the ground. This corresponds with signage that we have in place as a way when individuals are queuing at the concession lines, they know to stand on the X's, or they are encouraged to stand at the X's. The photo on the right shows bleachers. This is a couple of weeks ago when we started putting dots. Again, we didn't want to paint on our bleachers as we felt like it was going to look really bad, but we have placed red dots every 6 feet, and we have added signage that encourages people to sit on the red dots, which encourages social distancing as they're spread out every 6 feet. Here's a few examples of signage. Stop the spread of germs in the middle of the page is the sign. I think we placed 300 of those out through various park locations as a way to encourage people to social distance and spread out. The sign in the top right, the wash your hands, is a CDC sign that we have at our community centers where we have children. Again, it is a sign that is a little more fun and easily understood by youth. And so those are in our indoor facilities where children, and then the two signs on the bottom right and bottom left are the ones in all of our other bathrooms, either male or female restroom, again, encouraging people to wash their hands. And then the sign on the top left is a sign as it relates to things that individuals need to do to stop the spread of germs and adhere to social distance, washing hands, wear a face mask, all the items from the CDC that we have heard over and over again. Really trying to rehash the message from the CDC so that the public hears the same message that they are hearing, whether they're looking from their local health department or from DHEC or from the news each day. So that's a lot of varying information. I don't know if I hit on items that helped. I hope I did. I would be happy. I could go a lot more into detail on various items, but didn't want to bore you on the procedural side of things. And so I don't know if there's any questions as it relates to any of the processes or dealing with staff or elected officials or youth groups or summer camp or programs. I'd be happy to field any questions as it relates to any items I covered, or maybe items that I should have covered that you wish I would have.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm Connor with Mount Holly. I have two, actually. Do y'all have a plan in place if someone does test positive, like especially like specifically in athletics? Because I'm pretty much just in athletics.
Yes. So there's two things. We have to look at it from the employee and the participant side. And so we have a flow chart that, and so for example, we sent 7 employees to be tested Friday. And so we had an employee that has a friend outside of work who she had spent some time with that had tested positive. And so she communicated that with us. We put her and the employees that she had interacted with on self-quarantine and worked with our emergency management department, and had all 7 of those employees get tested on Friday, and they are home not working until we get the results. My phone is literally blowing up right now, so it may be that. So that's the employee side. On the participant side, we have a very similar process in place. And what it may be best for me to do is share our summer camp procedure manual with Zip, and he can blast that out. And what that does is it kind of lays out, and it treats more summer camp, but we're handling the same. If a summer camp participant has signs and symptoms of COVID-19, how do we handle that? If they test positive, how do we handle that? And so, but long story short, I would say that we isolate if they're under our care. Every facility we have has a quarantine location. That individual, if their parent or guardian is not there, goes to this office space, and they are there until they are picked up. Once they're picked up, that area is locked down for 24 hours without anybody going in there if it's an indoor space, and it sits for 24 hours, and then we hire a third-party company who comes in and sanitizes that area and in an additional area where they've been before the public can resume to that area. If it is an outdoor area, and I don't know if you've heard a lot about contact tracing, so DHEC is all about contact tracing. What they want to know is, who did that individual interact with while they were on that property? So they want to know, like, the rosters. If you have athletics going on, then you know the teams that were out there. And so then you know the rosters associated. And then essentially what is going to happen is DHEC, or whoever's taking the lead on that in your community, is going to want to know the contact information of those individuals. So then, so for us, we turn that over to DHEC, and we give them the names and the contact information. And then while we will share with those participants that they have a potential exposure, DHEC will handle the testing and the tracing and figuring out whether anyone who was potentially exposed was exposed at a level where they're concerned that they could, because it typically comes down to, were you within 6 feet of an individual who tested positive for 15 minutes or longer? Did a person who tested positive sneeze or cough on you? Or do you live in the same household as someone who tested positive? Those are kind of the 3 benchmarks that DHEC typically uses to see how concerned they are that you would test positive. And I know there's been a lot of debate about touching things and, athletics. I'm using a bat that you used and it needs to be sanitized, in between use. And I think the likelihood from what I've read and from talking to DHEC of exposure from going from a bat, because I touched it and then handed it to you, is pretty slim in comparison to a cough or a sneeze or something like that.
Okay.
So I can share our handbook, and that probably will give you more of a procedural look, but that's kind of like the Cliff Note version.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Kevin, go ahead, Connie.
I just said I have one more question. I know you kind of briefly touched on like baseball with like the extended dugouts and stuff like that. But do y'all do any other sports like soccer or volleyball? Because I know those are our 3 big sports that we do to kind of see what different ideas y'all might be doing to help with social distancing and stuff with those 2 sports.
So our soccer groups that we work with decided not to cram a summer season in. Baseball and softball were ready to go. Soccer has decided to wait until August. Soccer is actually going to be easier for us because for us, the parents sit on one side of the field and the players sit on the other. And so we have more space to spread players out on a sideline, whereas in baseball and softball, we're worried about protecting them from the hard ball hitting them, so they're within the dugout. Well, in a soccer field, we have a half a field to spread out an entire team on each side. And then the parents can sit on the other side. For us, parents bring bag chairs. They don't sit in bleachers. So again, soccer is going to be much easier. I think volleyball is going to be harder because it's indoors. And we have not, even from a state level, we have not resumed athletic events indoors yet. And so I assume that's coming. But I think anything indoor is going to be more challenging because people are going to sit in bleachers, and how close people can be and breathing on top of each other and coughing and sneezing, which is really primarily our concern. We're not ready to flush that out yet. I'm not really ready to open that yet. But like on summer camp, we're not letting summer campers bring personal belongings in the building unless they're medically necessary. Each summer camper has their own cubby like they would in a school. Each summer camper has their own crayons and pencils and markers. We're not sharing items. And so, again, to whatever extent possible, we are trying to limit the shared personal items and setting up rooms so even the children are not within 6 feet of each other. But again, when we play games and activities, kids don't social distance very well. And so that becomes the challenge. I do think opening up athletics to indoors is going to be a challenge until we feel more comfortable with limiting capacity, or how do we figure out how we limit capacity. I think some communities, when I've talked about it, are not going to allow spectators in the gym, right? You're going to drop your kids off for basketball or volleyball practice, and then the parents are going to have to hang out outside. Or they're going to put up a video camera and they're going to stream it on a big screen. I don't know how you do that, because to get a bunch of people in a gym is going to be nearly impossible with all the restrictions that are in place.
Cool, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Okay, Kevin, I got one for you. How do you handle outside organizations come in for renting your facilities for practice?
So outside organizations can only rent outdoor facilities right now. Nothing indoors is open because of summer camp. So if an outside organization, an AAU team, wants to rent one of our gyms for basketball on a Saturday or Sunday, I'm telling them no, because if we have summer camp on Friday and Monday, I don't want 30 outsiders who we don't know coming into our facility, because then we have to clean and sanitize it again. But for outdoor space, they can go through our process and they can rent a field based on availability, just like they could before. And we're just requiring them to adhere to the same guidelines and scheduling requirements that we have in place. So if a team has a ball field rented from 10 to 12, then we're not letting anybody rent it from 12 to 2 like we would have previously. Now, if we rent it from 10 to 12, then the next team can rent it from 1 to 3 so that we have an hour to clean, sanitize, and get that group out of the way. So our facilities, outdoor facilities, are open to rent, but we've kind of spread out the way we do rentals so that we have the ability to sanitize in between rentals. And if we don't have the ability to sanitize between rentals, then we're not renting it and we're just not generating the revenue, because it's just not feasible.
Kevin, Brian
Yes.
from Belmont. A quick question for you. What percentage would you say have dropped off since this, and have you seen a large number of participants dropping off due to the COVID?
What I've seen here in Spartanburg, and again, I'll say this: Spartanburg is very conservative politically, so there's more people that are worried that their kids were not playing baseball than they were worried about getting COVID-19. So that's the environment, right, wrong, or indifferent. That's the environment here, holistically. Most of participation rates have not dropped off due to COVID-19. Most participation rates have dropped off because children that play rec sports like their time off and they like their summers. And so because our rec seasons have rolled into summer, most of the participation, and there is a drop in participation, but it's because people already have plans for the summer and they don't want to mess up their summer. I know that we're hosting a USA softball event this weekend at Tiger River Park, and there are teams coming as far as Ohio. Participation is through the roof on the travel side, which again can be concerning when you're looking at the travel side of it. So the travel side, I've seen no drop off. The rec side, I've seen some drop off, but I think it's because we've changed when we normally play. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, I guess nobody else has any more questions, and when you shoot me that information, I'll be able to give that out to everyone. And you were very thorough in what you did, and I really appreciate your presentation. I think you gave some good insight on what we need to be looking at in the future as far as our programming and our indoor facilities.
And I'll also share our return to play for athletics as well. That document, through the South Carolina Recreation and Park Association, we made some recommendations to accelerate South Carolina, which was the committee that Governor McMaster put together as a way to accelerate the reopening of the state. And so we provided some guidance, and then that committee took some of SCRPA's guidance and created a document. And so I will share that as well on the athletic side. So that gives people a pretty good idea of what South Carolina is looking at holistically from returning to play for those.
Okay, good. Anybody else got anything from the county perspective? Gaston County, anybody? We good? All right, then. Well, I want to thank everybody for participating in this, and hopefully we can do something again and meet in person in the next time we do this. If not, then we'll try to host something again. We have something to come up. So again, I appreciate everybody coming out, and I want to really thank Kevin for him coming out and giving this presentation. He did a great job, in my opinion. And I'll stay in contact with Kevin always, and we communicate, talk about different recreational activities all the time. So thanks a lot, everybody. And just give a shout out to Kevin if you want to right now before we leave.
Thank you for everything. Appreciate all the information.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks for the
My pleasure.
presentation and thanks for setting it up, Zip. I appreciate it.
All right, well, we're good to go then. We'll see everybody. If you need anything, just give us a holler. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, guys.